Now, he didn't break any news. I told you he wasn't going to break any news. That's just not how these things go. The end of the season press conference, he's just going to tell you that they're looking into this, looking into that. But Mike Tomlin did show the London face today. And I'm going to explain what that means. Good afternoon to you. Good Tuesday afternoon. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is the new Double Shot Show. It comes your way every weekday afternoon. Tomlin might have generated a headline or two with his leaning toward Justin Fields, his very clear leaning toward Justin Fields as being back for the 2025 season. I'll be getting into that in the next segment with Chris Halleck. But I was more invested in seeing what the mood was, whether there was anything remotely humble about his approach, his delivery. And as someone who's covered this man's entire tenure in Pittsburgh, I can tell you that there was. I can tell you that this was different. Now, he's not going to stand there and say, I suck, I'm the worst, fire me. It's not in his DNA. And by the way, it also wouldn't be very productive. This was what he had to say specifically as it relates to the criticism that he's receiving, whether it's from people like me. I've outright called for him to get fired. People like you, whoever. This was what he had to say on that subject.
I have no response to that. I understand the nature of what it is that we do, the attention and criticism that comes with it. As a matter of fact, I embrace it, to be quite honest with you. I enjoy the urgency that comes with what I do and what we do. I don't make excuses for failure. I own it. But I also feel like I'm capable. And so as long as I'm afforded an opportunity to do that, I will continue. But I certainly understand their frustrations, and probably more importantly than that, I share it because that's how I'm wired. And so I'm not a big time comfort seeker. And particularly in circumstances such as this, I don't view myself as a comfort provider because there's, words are hollow, to be quite honest with you. It's about what we do and less about what we say. And so I've learned to say very little when things are going good, and I've learned to say less when they aren't.
That right there, that's London face. Whenever the Steelers started out the 2013 season 0-3. Their fourth game was played overseas. The last game, by the way, that they played overseas against the Vikings, who also were 0-3 at the time. So you had two teams flying all the way to the far side of the planet. Steelers go over there. He totally butchered it. He butchered the trip. They went over on Friday, which was a mistake for a Sunday game, not allowing for the time change. The Vikings were there earlier in the week. And he blew it, and he knew it. They had nothing. Some of their players couldn't even stand up after that game because they had gotten no sleep. There's a press conference this was at Wembley Stadium, soccer stadium, and there's a press conference down a corridor away from the locker room. And this is worthwhile. Just hear this. And the press conference starts, and, we're all asking questions. I'm there, and I'm asking him, 0-4 is, new territory for you guys. How do you rebound, whatever else here? And there's some questions in there that would have made him uncomfortable. And the press conference ends, and he leaves the podium to go to the door before any of us can make it there so that he can make it to the locker room door. You're going to think I'm making this up. Just wait. He gets to the locker room door, and he holds it open for us, the reporters, and thanks each of us individually for making it all the way to England to cover that game. That's London face. Whenever he's so contrite, so, I guess you could call it beaten, that there's a realization that hits like, whoa, I'm maybe not going to have this job forever. I'm maybe not as good in the moment as I thought I was, or as I believed I should have been. Now, he did say that he believes he's capable. He did say that today. He said, I know that I can do this, which again is what you'd want to hear. You don't want arrogance, but you also don't want him to go, oh, I'm terrible, I'm the worst. But I do believe that at least in this moment, some of this hit him. Now, everything I just said, you could roll it up in a ball like this and throw it away because it means nothing. It means nothing. And he said this too. Words are hollow, or those three that he spoke. There's got to be action. He talked about a lot of change. There's got to be a lot of change. And when he talked about personnel, I started to cringe. He was like, uh-oh, you're going to start blaming the players here. You're going to start blaming the execution, and that doesn't get you anywhere. He immediately followed that by talking about strategy. Hey, we'll see. There's a very real chance that my wife could teach me how to cook, at this age. It could happen. I don't think it's going to, but it could. And you never know. When we come back, I'll be joined by Chris over on the South Side.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Joined now by Chris Halleck, as promised, over on the South Side. Contrition is only going to get you so far, and he's going to have to do stuff. And Chris, you asked him probably, I thought, the most pointed question of the day, in that, do you at least, because you can't address a problem if you don't recognize it, if you don't acknowledge it,
Yeah, I mean, that's why I just asked him, it's been the similar result. It's not the same exact 9-8 or 10-7, but it's the similar result every single season. So does that make you rethink the way you because like everybody can kind of like self-criticize and think of like, I do that with my job. Like, how can I get better at my job? I'm sure a lot of people do that with how they do. So I just ask him, like, how do you does that make you rethink? Yeah.
Well, here it is.
Mike, whenever you've had several seasons that have ended in similar ways, does that make you rethink the way that you either go about your job or the way that you go about just handling stuff?
Certainly. I have a cliche that the guys oftentimes throw back at me in jest, but it's true. 2 is a pattern. And I say that because there's an expiration date on adjusting and adapting, and so I use that phrase to reflect urgency, to reflect how quickly it is we need to adapt and adjust and move. And so, although, as you mentioned, we've had similar results, rest assured that, we're not doing the same things hoping for a different result. We have adapted, we have altered our approach, and we will continue because we're not getting what we seek, and that's the confetti game, is to be world champs. And so our goals are really clear. It's also really clear that we're falling short of it, and falling short of it in a consistent way. And so we're still going to continue to be open to adapting our behavior, our program, the structure of what it is that we do, to turn over every stone in an effort to get what we desire. That's just the appropriate and mature way to approach it.
All right. So the first thing that I have to observe from this little exchange is that, and take this gently, Chris, you committed the cardinal sin when asking Tomlin a question, which is that you left it up to a yes or no.
Yeah.
Because he'll always take that. And guess what? Guess what, though? One of the neatest observations that you can have of this whole press conference was that he said, certainly. And then you thought, and everybody thought, that's where the answer was going to stop, didn't you?
I thought so for a second. So then I was going to follow up
did.
with that. I was going to follow up, but then he kept talking.
But I'm just telling you, that's another act of contrition. It's another, oh no, I'm not going to be able to give this guy the yes or no answer that I would in a normal setting.
Yeah.
So he had to proceed and answer it fully. I saw and heard different things from him today, Chris, and I don't know what it means. None of us can know what it means. When he says a lot of change, what comes to your mind?
A lot of change to me. Well, first off, one of the things that's going to be an automatic change is the fact that they've got 26 free agents. Now, that's not all unrestricted. I think 21 or 22 of them are unrestricted free agents. That alone lends itself to a lot of change. How many of those guys are actually going to be coming back? I don't think it's going to be a lot of them. It might be 5 or 6 or 7, but that's still a small percentage. I don't know how many of those guys are coming back. So that's one change. But then I also think, okay, coaching staff. I mean,
that's what everybody wants to hear right now is not just coaching staff, but systemic, procedural, approach, attitude, all these things that we keep seeing them as commonalities in these December fades, in these playoff failures. We see them. And I don't know that they can get anywhere if they don't.
Well, and that's why I asked him what I asked him, because, he even admitted during the press conference and saying that they're still the beginning stages of going over a lot of how they're going to go about doing change, whether that's going to be, changing certain coaches. Certain coaches are going to be on their contracts are expiring. So they just might not bring certain guys, but he's not going to be able to answer those questions right now. So I'm like, okay, well, what can you do? Do you rethink the way that you go about doing things, the way you go about, okay, do you then, Arthur Smith's probably not going anywhere. So if you then rethink, okay, well, you got to tell Arthur, listen, this is what the better offensive minds are doing. You've got to adapt. You've got to change. What can he do? Because ultimately, when it comes to that kind of stuff on the coaching staff, the buck stops with him. I mean, if he decides, Arthur, listen, I like the way you ran things in Tennessee and Atlanta, but it's not 2019 anymore. It's not 2020 anymore. You got to get with the times a little bit more, or what about with Terrell Lawson? Does he still have a job? No. So there are certain things that he can do in the meantime, and he can give an answer in the meantime for what he might be trying to do when it comes to change.
Austin's got scapegoat written all over him. He just does. I really like the guy. I know you do too, but he's got, you can't keep both coordinators and the head coach after something like that. You're gonna move somebody out, and Austin, he can be replaced by somebody else who just listens to Tomlin. Because that's how the defense rolls around here, and it's going to continue to roll. I don't care what he would say on that subject. He's going to run the defense as long as he's here. I thought the most compelling, I guess if you want to call it news, out of this, because there wasn't going to be he wasn't going to show up and say, hey, I've changed this guy, changed that guy. That never happens. And actually, I'm not sure you want it to 2 days in.
Yeah.
But when he mentions Justin Fields, when he responds as emphatically as he did about Fields, that he thinks that he can be a guy who's a starter in the NFL, 17-game starter was the way the question was phrased. Yeah. That he believes in Justin and his work ethic and everything else. And something else, when it came up, how important is it towards your quarterback that you have mobility? Very, very important was the response. Now, I'm going to remind everybody that he said that the Steelers quarterbacks were already in this building in this same session last year, and the only quarterback in the building at the time was Mason Rudolph. So I wouldn't take this too far, but Fields is already there, and Fields he isn't mobile. He's freakishly mobile.
Yeah, and he did say later on when he wasn't talking about Fields, but he did say the quarterback mobility was going to be very important to him. And so when I think quarterback mobility, I don't necessarily think about 36-year-old Russell Wilson. I think about Justin Fields, who's outside of Lamar Jackson, probably the most dynamic runner as a quarterback in the league. So
he's right now. You don't think he's faster than Lamar right now?
I don't know about it, but it's not just foot speed. It's also the ability to read and react to defenses.
React. Okay, that's fair. I wouldn't take Lamar in a straight-out race.
No, but Justin's also a little bit bigger too. I wouldn't want to get in front of Justin Fields when he's running full speed ahead of me.
Right.
But no, like also it's the ability to read and react. And Lamar's just also a freakish athlete. But still, I hear those things. Obviously, the actual answer he said about Justin Fields, but then it's the fact that he said quarterback mobility is going to be very important. Like I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together here, and to me, like now I know that since August, I've been reporting on since August that they've liked Russell Wilson. They've been considering him, but you can't just ignore the last 5 games either. And so maybe the last 5 games have been enough for them to be like, okay, we got to take a step back. We got to kind of rethink this. Meanwhile, Justin Fields is 25, 26 years old. He's a whole decade younger than Russell Wilson. And he definitely has more upside at this point in his career. So
now, there's another thing that he brought up earlier earlier in the Justin Fields stuff, where he said, as it relates to quarterbacks in general, when you're talking about the commonality of what's happened in recent years and how many different quarterbacks they've had, and he said he acknowledged that's a component of it, which I also didn't expect him to say. That sounded like he wasn't necessarily thrilled with the play at that position in how this season fell apart, which of course would very easily lead to counters from everybody who hears it. Like, why didn't you make the change then? Why did you just watch Wilson lose all 5 of these games?
Yeah. And listen, I think the big part of that, my main takeaway from him at least admitting it now again, and he even said words are hollow. So let's just take a look here. I mean, I've been saying this, and I'm going to continue to harp on it. Quarterback is the most important position in all of sports. It has the biggest impact on team success. They have to figure out quarterback, and having the inconsistency that they've had at quarterback, even in Ben's last couple of years, the quarterback play, once his arm went, that he wasn't Ben anymore. No. And since then, they haven't had that quarterback play in which you can go into a stadium against Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson and think you actually have a chance to win that game. Until that's figured out, and I'm not saying Justin Fields is that guy. He still has a lot more to prove in order to show that, okay, yeah, he's definitely that guy. But at least in the meantime, until they can possibly draft a guy, the upside is at least there. So you got to start somewhere when it comes to the quarterback position. So I'm curious to see how this is going to play out over the next couple of months for sure.
Here's another way of thinking about this. We have all accepted for a while now that the going rate to keep Wilson in Pittsburgh was going to be 3 years and $100 million. Now, that comes out of nowhere, but then it gets repeated often enough that we all accept it as the truth. I mean, that's one of those things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No way. No way. Now, after what we heard, I'm not even talking about what we just saw. I'm talking about what we just heard today. There's no way that your next step is to say, all right, let's cut a 9-figure check for that guy. No way.
Yeah. And the thing is that like at this point, the one thing that the Steelers can do is they have a lot of roster flexibility. Listen, they can make some very easy cuts. Preston Smith, $13 million immediately saved, no dead cap whatsoever.
No brainer, yeah.
You're right. And then Cole Holcomb is another big. I mean, you talk about maybe 3 or 4 cuts. You're talking about the Steelers being in the $80 million range in terms of cap space. What sounds better, Justin Fields for $10 or $15 million a year, or Russell Wilson for $30+ million a year? I'm sorry.
And don't forget that around the time that the Steelers were engaged in that Brandon Ayuk chase, they were going to have to restructure a whole bunch of contracts. Yeah. And they ended up not doing any of them except Alex Highsmith. Yeah. So there's still all kinds of this and that they can pull off. And if they do, as I expect that they will, sign TJ Watt to an extension this summer because he's got 1 year left, you can also do things within that TJ extension to make sure that you've got cap space. And if anybody'd be willing to give it up or structure things to a team-friendly way to try to win a Super Bowl or to win a playoff game, for that matter, it would be TJ. So the Fields thing for me is the headline, even more than this sad face and everything else, you know?
Oh no, for sure. And the fact that he was openly admitted to that, and again, stress quarterback mobility, it's a precursor for what we may be seeing over the next couple of months. But I do think if the organization is going to go in that direction, try to get younger at quarterback, try to get a little bit more modern at quarterback. Who knows? But it might not be the best answer right now, but at least it's a start.
Look at all these teams in the playoffs and how their quarterbacks can move. The Steelers have one who can move faster than any of them if they choose to keep him. When we come back, J1Q.
Safety is a habit. Gun safety and responsible storage are no different. Help prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft. Keep firearms safe and secure when not in use. For safe storage options, visit projectchildsafe.org.
Time now for today's J1Q. Stands for just one question, and we're heading several states to the south.
Oh, good morning, DK. It's Fly Chris out of Florida. So, did you really think a Steelers loss was going to stop a guy like me from talking Steelers ball? Negative, Ghost Rider. So, do you think that maybe we value our draft picks too much, and that's why we're not able to get top talent, make really good trades, because we're not willing to give up draft picks maybe? Offensively, we just don't have anything, man. And it's okay for us to get it out in the open instead of us trying to fire people or whatever. We just suck offensively. Call it what it is.
You certainly just did, Chris. Ghost Rider. That's a new one on me. When I look at the Steelers offense, what I don't see, Chris, is a group that's one trade away. There was a part of the season when it was like Justin Fields' last start or two, segueing into Russell Wilson's first handful, where you had some hope for this group. And then it was blown to bits, just like everything else. Everything else got blown to bits. Anything that you believed in about this team, about this operation, about this roster, everything just smithereens. So I don't see, when I look at them, I don't see, all right, well, if you go and get that WR2, if you finally give up those picks that Omar Khan didn't appear to be all that enthused about giving up, that everything's going to be okay. It's not. It's not. There's no quarterback. I don't care that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are both saying they want to come back. Of course they're going to say, why wouldn't they say that? Why would you burn a bridge? I don't care that the Steelers would want one or both back, and I definitely don't care that they would say it, because they said a lot of stuff about quarterbacks in recent off seasons that they very clearly didn't mean. You're not going to have Najee Harris. You're not going to have James Daniels at right guard. You're not going to have any clue as to what you're going to get out of your right tackle in Broderick Jones. You still have a baby-faced Troy Fautanu, who's got a start and a half in his NFL career, who's going to be a starter for you, most likely. It's your most important line position. You got questions galore. So the last thing, respectfully here, Chris, that I'd be thinking about is, how do they get that one last piece by giving up, a draft pick here or there? I had a point in the season, again, where I could have been sold on going and getting a guy. And in fairness to Omar, he did go and get Mike Williams, only for the coaching staff to just kind of look at him tilt-headed for a month and a half and wonder what he's doing there. One of the craziest things, by the way, about the whole season, the non-use of Williams, especially when George Pickens was out. I'll never be able to wrap my head around that one. But I don't mean to keep doing this to you guys, but I got nothing for you. You know, this is an exasperating scene right now. This is what it's like to cover the Pirates, another one of the other two teams in town that I cover. I think that's probably the best way I can describe this, from my own perspective. I've often referred to covering the Pirates as attempting to explain the inexplicable. And that's what this is. The Steelers were just faced with one massive bout of failure here. And it was something that compounded several years of very similar failure. And the first response, the reflex, tapping Art Rooney on the knee, was got to keep this all intact. Got to keep everything going the way it is. And you can say, he can say whatever he's going to say later this month. Tomlin can say whatever it was that he said. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I know, everyone knows. Nothing's going to change. That's all I've got for you. That's all I've got for you. Well, we'll have another show tomorrow anyway.